Everything was just about my sister. We were of the same age yet I was not allowed to touch her toys. She gets a new set of clothes now and then while I get only a pair of clothes at Christmas and one on our birthday. If we didn't share our birthday, they wouldn't even bother celebrating it. Oh, I just realized if I didn't share my birthday with my sister, I wouldn't exist. I got the bare minimum thing, and that too was not out of love but to save their faces from the judgmental eyes of the relatives. The only good thing about my childhood was my grandfather. He was the only one who was able to see through their BS. Sadly, he passed away when I was 13. That was the worst day of my life. I had no one to have my back. We lived in a tiny house in the suburbs. My sister and I shared a room. It was more like, I had a bed and a tiny closet beneath my bed in my sister's room. The entire room was filled with her clothes, toys, and posters. I was not even allowed to complain because according to my parents, they were doing enough for me. My sister didn't like my presence in her room. I was allowed in the room only in the night to sleep. Even when I was sick, I would have to lie down on the couch and not in my room because she is a girl and she needs privacy. I desperately wanted to be 18 so that I could move out of the house. Looks like my family were far more desperate to get rid of me. When we were 16, my sister got knocked up by a 19-year loser. His parents had thrown him out of the house when he failed thrice in the 8th grade. My parents got them married and my father got him a cleaner's job at his factory. My father is a mechanic and works at an automobile manufacturing company. My parents brought him home, so obviously I had to move out of my room to make space for him. But our house had only 2 rooms and a tiny living space. I asked if I could sleep on the couch, but my father denied it, saying he sleeps on the couch when my mom's snoring becomes unbearable on winter nights. I was asked to find a place for myself. To add fuel to my situation, my loser Bill would say, "Dude, it's not tough to find a place for yourself. My parents threw me out when I was 15 and yet I was able to put my life together. Now I have a family. Trust me, it's gonna get better out there." I sighed. Yeah, if living off as a junkie means putting life together and knocking up a minor means family to you, then sure. Most of my relatives lived far off the place, and moreover my parents threatened me not to show up at any of the relatives' places because that would mean exposing my parents' toxicity. I requested a few of my friends to lend me their couch to sleep, but there was no luck. Why on earth would their parents allow me in their house when my own parents kicked me out? But one of my classmates was living in a garage. He let me in for a few months until his parents saw me there and kicked me out. I slept on a bench on the sidewalk for a few days until I was rounded up by the cops and brought home. My parents made up the story that I had run away from home. They took me in that night. My father got me a makeshift tent from a junkyard and asked me to use the space in the backyard to set up my place. It was a reward for remaining silent in front of the cops and obeying their orders of not showing up at the relatives. Tent was still safer than sleeping in the open. Summer was still okay, but winter was terrible. One day it was so cold, I felt I was almost gonna die of freezing. I knocked on my house but no one responded. I desperately needed help. I knocked on my parents' bedroom window. My dad yelled from inside not to disturb him else he'd come out and knock me down. I felt so miserable that at one point I wanted to die. I cried for the whole night. The next day, I went searching for a job that would lend me a space to sleep. One of the bakery shops needed a worker for his factory that was like 20 miles away, but he agreed to give me a place to sleep and even offered me food. Basically, they baked it in their house and needed a helping hand. They offered me to live in their backyard, but I would have to clean it up. I agreed. The place was pretty messed up with flour and sugar all over the place. Not to mention the rodents surviving on them. But I was at the lowest point in my life. I readily took that job. I packed up my stuff and left. My sister was even happy and said, "Good that you're leaving. We don't have space for you here." No one even bothered to ask me where I was going. I cleaned up the place and made it habitable. Initially, it was difficult to get rid of the rodents when they came searching for food, but eventually, I felt cozy living there. I had to drop out of high school. There were a few more months left for the final year exams. My friends told me to continue living in my parents' backyard and complete high school, but I had given up. I worked hard in my job and lived off my salary. Soon enough I realized I had to upskill myself to get a better job. I picked up few skills. My dad is a mechanic, so I grew up playing with his toolbox. Worked for my parents. They didn't have to get me toys, plus I helped dad in plumbing the house. I saved up and took up a course and a job at a car plant. I worked my ass off to climb up the ladder. Now I'm a supervisor. Recently, one of my old friends was selling off his house urgently. He has some divorce issues and he wanted an immediate buyer. I was reluctant to buy a 3-bedroom house, but he offered me a hefty discount on the market price and agreed to accept the down payment in parts. I grabbed it 2 weeks back. I moved into my new house and today I found unexpected guests at my door. Yes, my parents, sister, and Bill. It was a surprise for me because I was NC with them all these years. Neither did they reach out to me. This house of mine is nearly 15 miles away from their place. So there's no way they would have bumped here casually. I'm not in touch with any of the relatives, neither in person nor on social media, but I'm guessing it's the neighbor. I'm still friends with one of my neighbors. He might have seen the pictures of my house on Facebook and told my parents about it. I still have no idea how they figured out the exact address.